How are new Transformers made? Back in the 80s, this question had a simple answer. They were built by other Transformers. But as Transformers lore has grown and changed over nearly 4 decades, the answer has grown and changed too. That's what we're going to explore today in The Basics on Protoforms. Protoforms are the first stage of the Transformer life cycle, the form in which new Cybertronians normally begin their lives. Featureless mannequin-like robots composed of a liquid metal that hasn't yet been shaped in accordance with an alternate mode. Protoforms were introduced into Transformers lore in the 1996 cartoon Beast Wars, and today they're a staple of the franchise. Transformers don't sexually reproduce, so there are 2 major ways protoforms come into being. They can be constructed by other Transformers, in which case they'll scan an alternate mode upon their activation, or they can emerge spontaneously from the substance of their metal homeworld, Cybertron itself, with alternate modes already naturally encoded into their circuits. For a little over the last decade, this has generally been presented as the natural way Transformers are created, but which has died out as a result of the Great War. Some depictions of protoforms treat them as a sort of pre-life state that ends as soon as their bodies finish reshaping themselves, after which they awaken as fully formed robots. But others present them as more of a developmental stage, with the protoform being conscious during its shaping process, even temporarily resembling a baby or a child as its body rapidly adopts its full-grown shape, emphasizing the Transformers' nature not as simply machines to be built and programmed, but as true, living beings. But like I said, this wasn't always the case. In classic media, such as the original Transformers cartoon and the Marvel comic book, all new Transformer life was shown being built by others. A robot's physical appearance and alternate mode were determined by their creator as part of the construction process, and after their body was built, they would be brought to life, usually through the use of an ancient mystical relic, such as the Autobot Matrix or the megacomputer Vector Sigma. But this origin invited the question, if Transformers could only be built by other Transformers, then who built the very first Transformers? In the cartoon, the alien Quintessons were the original Transformers creators, but the Marvel comic offered a different, more fantastical answer when it revealed that the first Transformers were not built, but born, emerging out of the fabric of Cybertron itself, brought to life by the God of Light, Primus, who dwelled within the planet. The 1993 sequel comic Generation 2 explained that only this very first generation were born in this way, rising out of the planet as blank, skeletal, liquid metal robots that quickly reshaped themselves into fully formed Transformers. These first robots multiplied by dividing their bodies over and over, until the Transformer race reached a predetermined size programmed into them by Primus, whereupon the process stopped and came to be replaced by the familiar method of building new robots and using the Matrix containing the power of Primus to bring them to life. Now, as Transformer lore expanded in the years that followed the end of the original comic and cartoon, the Primus origin story generally came to be depicted as the standard origin for the Transformer race in new series. But the idea that the original Transformers had been born out of Cybertron wouldn't be directly addressed again for a long time, being touched on only briefly in a few places, like Dreamwave Productions comic books, which identified the spot where the first Transformers emerged as the Well of All Sparks, and also in tie-in comics for the live-action film series. But that's jumping ahead a little. Long before that, just a few years after Generation 2, there was Beast Wars. This series was set centuries after the era of the Autobots and Decepticons, after a technological quantum leap had seen the Transformers develop the ability to adopt organic alternate modes as well as mechanical ones. Rather than being built with their appearance and alt modes already decided upon as past generations had been, the new robots created from this technology, the Maximals and Predacons, began life as protoforms, featureless robots composed of nanotechnological liquid metal protomatter that could be shaped into anything. Beast Wars didn't give a detailed origin for protoform technology, but in subsequent years, various pieces of spin-off media have offered a variety of different possible explanations, ranging from it being a creation of the alien race, the Vok, to the product of an experiment by the scheming Tri-Predicus Council. Whatever their precise origin, protoforms were manufactured on Cybertron, infused with a life-giving spark, programmed to be either Maximals or Predacons, and stored in stasis pods that kept them inert until such time as they were to be activated. All the protoforms featured in Beast Wars were Maximal ones, which had been assigned to the exploration ship Axalon. The ship's mission was to drop the pods on alien planets, where they would scan local life forms to serve as alt modes for the protoforms within, who would then come online to explore the new world. But the Axalon's protoforms never got to fulfill their intended function, as the ship was shot down over Earth by a gang of Predacon criminals in the cartoon's first episode. As it fell, the Axalon ejected its stasis pods into orbit around the planet to keep them safe. Over the course of the series, pods would periodically fall from orbit, and the Maximals and Predacons stranded on Earth would race to recover them and activate the protoforms within to add to their ranks. The evil Predacons often using shell programs to overwrite the protoforms' heroic Maximal programming. Following their introduction in Beast Wars, protoforms rapidly became a fixture of Transformers lore. New stories were quick to drop the idea that they were a new technological innovation, though other ways of creating Transformers would still be shown to exist, including the old construction method, and a new method introduced by the live-action films, which saw ordinary machines reformatted to become Transformers through the power of the life-giving relic, the Allspark. In the 21st century, the majority of new series, comics, cartoons, and films, both brand new continuities and reboots of Generation 1, have come to depict protoforms as the standard first stage of a Cybertronian's life. This widespread adoption of the concept, and with it, the very idea that Transformers had a life cycle that involved them advancing from one distinct physical stage of existence to the next, was a big step in furthering the depiction of the race as more like living organisms than pure machines, something that the movie universe in particular would add to with its depiction of protoforms as being not so much built as grown, starting out as small hatchlings nurtured in energon sacs who grew from infant-like forms to full-size protoform robots. Additionally, the 1998 Japanese spin-off series Beast Wars II introduced the idea that it was possible for a Transformer to regress their body back to a protoform-like state, devoid of an alternate mode. This idea would also carry forward into new series, most prominently showcased by the films, in which Transformers would shed their alt modes and revert to a stripped-down protoform base state to travel between planets. As protoforms, they could assume comet-like shapes that they used to journey through space, plummeting down onto new worlds where they would scan new modes. Then, in 2010, came the Aligned Continuity, a new universe which combined ideas from all past series to build a unified vision for Transformers lore. This continuity brought together the concept of protoforms and the concept of Transformers being born out of Cybertron and united them to establish a definitive modern origin story for Transformer life. In the Aligned Continuity, all Transformer life was born within the Well of All Sparks. This giant pit was the resting place of the Allspark, which was a conduit for the power of Primus, and which generated new protoforms out of the substance of Cybertron as it saw fit. The well was brought online in Cybertron's ancient past by the Primes, the original 13 Cybertronians created by Primus, who each submitted their schematic data to it. Thus, each new protoform born from the well was made up of some random combination of the different archetypes each of the primes represented, different genders, minicons, combiners, beasts, and more. As a result, the protoforms were born with alternate modes already encoded in them, and they would mature into their fully grown forms in the time it took them to make their way out of the well. When the Transformers later founded colonies on other planets, they used the energy of the well to ignite copies of it on these worlds, so each colony could give birth to its own native Transformers. However, when the Great War between the Autobots and Decepticons began, it became necessary for the Autobots to launch the Allspark into space to put its power beyond the Decepticons' reach, and so Cybertron lost the ability to generate new life, until Optimus Prime found and restored the Allspark to the planet, as seen at the climax of the Transformers Prime animated series. Hot on the heels of the aligned continuity, IDW Publishing's comic books would also prominently feature a version of this natural birth process, putting their own spin on the concept. Rather than the singular well of all sparks, in IDW's universe, protoforms emerged from various locations around Cybertron, named hotspots. Sparks would ignite in the ground, and the metal of the planet around them liquefied to form the protoform, which matured from childlike to fully grown forms in a short space of time. In this version of the story, when Cybertron ceased generating new life, the Transformers devised a substitute method. As in the Marvel comic, they manufactured new bodies and brought them to life using sparks generated by the Matrix. For a time, Transformers built in this manner, dubbed constructed cold, were considered to be inferior to natural-born, forged protoforms, but by the present day of the series, these prejudices were largely a thing of the past. Though a lot of the lore established by the aligned continuity has become foundational for subsequent series, IDW has really been the only series to touch on the concept of protoforms. Others have instead been content to simply credit the Allspark with creating life without explaining exactly how it does it. For instance, 2018's Transformers Cyberverse showed it creating new Transformers quite literally out of thin air. When IDW rebooted their comics in 2019, they even dropped the concept of protoforms naturally emerging from Cybertron, and returned to depicting them as being created by others, forged by adding sparks to vats of liquid metal mined from Cybertron. Thus, the answer to the question of how exactly new Transformers are made continues to vary from series to series, and it remains to be seen what new answers future series will give. And those are the basics on protoforms. Built or born, natural or artificial, forged or constructed cold, what's your preferred version? Have your say in the comments. For more history and lore from the world of the Transformers like this, remember to like and subscribe, and if you support the series on Patreon, you'll get early access to new episodes.